Hello, welcome to Yurt Time with Coconut Kurt. I'm your host, Coconut Kurt. In today's video, we're going to go over correct technique. So what is correct technique for an exercise? And the correct technique for an exercise is that you do the exercise with the totality of your being. So a lot of people have incorrect technique, mostly because the totality of their being is just right here. And so if you try and do anything from here inward, the percentage of your technique that is complete or correct or accurate or true is like the universe divided by you, or you divided by the whole universe would be the percentage correct. So to do something correct, external forces have to move you. So that means that you need to be motivated, right? That means you need to be moved by something else. That's the first step in extending out of your body into the realm of correct technique. So it's like you have to choose something to motivate you, and not only that, you can't just intellectually choose something of I want to be motivated by that. To have it be correct technique, you have to feel inward, like sort of in your heart, like what are you motivated by? Like what's actually motivating you, right? And so that feeling of being pushed or pressured in a particular direction, of being called, of being whatever, you're basically in a current of existence, right? You've expanded out into existence. There's something external and you go, XYZ thing is calling me. Right? It might be any sort of self-improvement. It could be it could be family. Like, you know, if you have what motivates me radically changed like when I had kids, right? So that sort of thing motivates you. All of these weird feelings and these emotions in your heart, a lot of which people call love. Right? So there might be like an emotion or something in your heart that you want to go towards or avoid. Those things can like really motivate you, and that's just current. I'll just like feel it, notice it's there. You're motivated in that direction. Once you've found that, even if you don't want to go in that direction, you still have to, you're looking at that thing and you have to go, okay, why don't you want to go in that direction? There's a different motivation. So that very thought of like, I don't want to go in that direction, the only way out of that direction with the correct technique is to find a different motivation. You have to like literally change your pitch, your magnetism, something has to change slightly to where you're veering off into a different direction. And it might be the motivational force might be pushing you that way, but once you become conscious of it and you want to intellectually choose, you can suddenly start to steer. Okay, so that's kind of the first step of technique, is just becoming conscious of the situation, right? So at a base level, if you're learning something, like if you want to learn something correctly, like throw out the what, right? The only way to learn something correctly is it's like right here, right now. You have to start with this process, because you can't get to like, oh, I'm gonna write correctly, and there's no motivational force behind it. You won't be able to learn any of the techniques. You just can't learn the techniques. Be they physical, writing, artistic, musical, like you just can't learn the techniques. There's no motive force behind it. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that can happen to people. You could call them compensation mechanisms, success, failure, or whatever. It's very, the motivational force is like realizing that you're in an ocean and it's got currents in it. And if you don't think there's currents, or you're going to try and swim somewhere, like you're like, oh, I want to go that way. Yeah, once you're in a situation to where you're going, I'm swimming in this infinite sea of desire, you're donezo. So you're going to eventually reach exhaustion, and then you'll start drifting in the direction of the thing that you were swimming against, probably. Because if you're going, you don't really swim when the current's going strongly in the direction that you want, right? So you can develop like body appearance like by swimming. You might have that desire. Like if the desire is to like body, you can struggle in any direction and you'll get results. Right, so anything self-focused, you can struggle in any direction, you'll get results. So like if you want to change like your body, it's like you do just struggle in any direction, you'll get it. Like, but you struggle. Like you gotta swim hard. Like if you're drifting away from what you think is your true form, right? You have to literally, that form struggles in any which sport, any which way. The struggling is the self, so you'll move towards your archetypical form, which is what most people would call like in shape or healthy, like how you're supposed to look, you're normal. Like the struggle, a practice of physical struggle pushes you towards normality. It pushes you towards you. It's that inward struggle, right? So you could say it like that inward struggle, the struggle of the self, of just like struggling like that. That's the foundation, right? That's where the correct technique is going to be emerging from. So it's like there's that. So don't skip that. Don't skip it, but just get it done, right? You gotta want it, because somebody has to be there to want it. So once you're there and you're ready to start doing something correctly, you feel the motivation of desire, which is it's pushing you in that direction. Everything flowing in that direction, that's you, that's the totality of your being. So anything that you do, any technique that you do has to account for all of that. And then that desire is happening. So you have to be, am I pushing against it? Am I swimming against it? And then what can you do with desire going that way is that you can steer, right? So it's like, oh, okay, the desire is pushing me that way. So it makes it feel like I want that. Right? Like if you have an energetic current of existence, like desire. So desire is like it's a large fraction of the totality of all the energy around you. So anytime that you do a technique, it needs to be in harmony with all of the energy around you. So one way to conceptualize or encapsulate a ton of that, like a huge amount of the field that we're in, is that feeling of motivation, which is synonymous with movements in the field that we exist in the field of consciousness. Motivation, desire, love. It's a current in the field of being. It's pushing you in that way. And when you're pushed in that way, you go, it's your mind, it's your being. So you go, I want that. I must want that. You have the experience of wanting that. If you're wanting to just go with the flow of the current. Right? The flow of the current is the programming, like the background state. That's the NPC level. The NPC level and the like totally enlightened level are the same level in terms of like the vacancy. But once you feel that so the motivation, the desire, the love, the things that move people, those compulsions, passions, those are all currents, and then you can go, okay, where do I want to go? And you can steer. So the current might go that way, and then you still use the current still pushing on you, the desire still pushing you towards that way, but you can use you have to deal with and engage with the desire. Like it's not going away necessarily. Or it's not leading anywhere necessarily. And going with it isn't necessarily bad, nor is fighting it necessarily bad, but it is like for correct technique has to be met with or running into that desire. So correct technique is either this thing is pushing me, I'm freaking super excited, or I don't want to do this anymore, I hate it. I want to go that way. And then you do the activity anyway, you're running into desire. So it's like as winds change, like the desire to either you're going to be towards something, or if it starts to push away, it's going to be running into you, so you're going to have that struggle. I want to go through this thing. And so ultimately it's so big that it's not about either one of those things. It's like, okay, there's a sailing to it. So something can be pushing you that way, and you can actually not go directly against your desire, but at an angle. And you can actually, the desire can pull you, you can be pulled towards something with the aversion. Which is like that's like learning to sail. And people get into it, it's like, why would you want to use it to only sail upwind? But once you kind of see and play with desire, you can start doing correct technique at any level that you're at. You might be in that new phase of like, you're just being pushed towards something. It's like, yay, free. Like, yeah, I'll just do this. But the instant winds change, boom, you'll just do that. And just that. So that's just somebody just drifting, right? Just going with the currents. Then you have people trying to swim places. And the people trying to swim places don't really ever get anywhere. It's weirdos thrashing about in infinity, right? That's what a normie thinks of, like the people that are awake. So it's motivation, but then in the space of like, you could say there's part of you in the space, right? So anytime you do anything, you're moving the totality of the space and like around your body and with your mind. So like the space would want to move. Imagine you have control of the water around you, the awareness around you. How do you move it so that if you're floating in it, how does it move? How does all of it move to maintain the float of the body? And so without true presence, like with true presence, you can find the motivation for anything that's happening. But without that, you definitely do need a reason. Otherwise, things become like fragmented exercises of like you're just moving from the inside. If you don't have a reason, the outside isn't moving you. Once you realize that you are the outside, you can just move the outside with no reason. And then that's the same as becoming casually as powerful as like an obsessed person. Like once you become conscious of the waves and the currents and kind of can sail them, you can consciously and calmly do things that normally look like only crazy obsessed people do, because it usually requires so much struggle. Yeah, all of it, like for correct technique, like all of it has to move. Stretching becomes a little different. Yeah, I only have like a pretty small range of motion before I like fall into myself and stop doing the movement correctly. So the depth of my own self or my own flexibility, my own strength gives me a buffer where I can stop doing correct movement and still do it. So it's like the older you get and the weaker you get, it's like you have to learn how to do things correctly, or the injuries are just crazy. Humans are actually not anything about it. It's kind of crazy. Like younger people don't know how to move, so you're constantly doing things incorrectly, deeply incorrectly. Hence the random injuries. So that's a big secret in martial arts, I bet. I don't know. Nobody ever told me a secret I was never an inside student, I don't think. But I bet a big secret would be you don't hit with the body, hit with the room. Right? You know, you put the head there, and then why just current here and not like, you know, just collapse the whole thing inward from all directions, right? Which is going to cause the body to move. Like, you do have to be there. But why make this, you know, the main thing and not like everything all at once? Boom, right? Boom. You probably cause weird cavitation inside somebody. Maybe don't do that. Yeah. Right? So you can try that instead of hitting and thinking of it in terms of like levers oppressed there. Imagine sort of a consciousness bubble collapsing, that collapse of which one spoke of the wheel, so to speak, is coming from your body. You're just over here. You just happen to be over here. Everywhere is moving in, though, to the same degree that you move in. Everywhere moves in. Obviously, since everything's moving in, it's moving into where you're punching. Right? So this implosion effect is going to hit where you punch, and if they block your punch, it's going to block the implosion effect. But if you manage to get that implosion effect, they can't stop the implosion effect. There would be no way to guard against it, really. And so that would make your contact just cause a kind of a depth charge. It would just casually go kind of subsurface a lot. Anyway, weird stuff like that. Yeah, that's correct technique. It's just everything's moving, but then it's not. It's like super not straightforward. You're interacting with it like a lot like a sailboat, a lot like a swimmer in an ocean, a lot like something that's totally pinned and buoyant to the surface, a lot like something that lives there like a dolphin. The ways that we interact with being are like all those different ways, like the ways that you see it, but then the actual terrain of reality is like if you take two people, one of them properly motivated, either being swept by the currents of light or of life, or they've become conscious and have started sailing or swimming in some way. You put them both on the same physical task of like writing a book, and depending on their relationship with motivation, with this field of consciousness, with the currents of which we call love or passions or whatever, depending on their relationship with that, it's going to radically change which one's like writing is better. and so that orientation or that connection that they have to that field and what the field is doing. So the field is like doing all the things that an ocean is doing, and not only that, it's doing all the things that like a biosphere is doing, all the things that a planet does, a lot of which are ocean-like. So there's a lot of waves, currents. That type of metaphor like works really well. It actually applies to like what, 60-80% of the whole thing is water metaphors, holds the shape of reality, like for real. The big shape, the big picture is held mostly by water. So yeah, a lot of currents, waves, seasons, cycles, things that hugely impact the ocean. That's also always happening to a person's consciousness in any particular time and activity, at all those different scales of like to the minute, to the decade. So there's cycles of all that, and then how they're interacting with that determines how well they write into this space. So that's the mythic or the imaginal space, and it's like, it's real. It has a terrain, it has a story, it has a history, it has a geography. Everyone's maps it. There's tons of techniques for interacting with it and dealing with it, except in recent times it was considered to be like non-existent. I don't even know, right? Like some it was all the all the toxins got to the anyway. So that's my seminar on correct technique. Like, subscribe.